Have you ever stopped to think that, in the midst of modernity, there are still ancient rituals that defy everything we know? Imagine ceremonies that surpass time, where pain turns into devotion, and what is considered bizarre by many is sacred to others. Rituals that deal with death in such an unexpected way that they seem like something out of a movie. These customs are more than traditions. These are stories that keep the secrets of cultures that, over the centuries, have remained faithful to their roots. What you will discover here are not just exotic practices. They are windows into the human soul, a search for connection with the invisible. Are you ready to explore the most mysterious and fascinating rituals the world has ever seen? What we are going to reveal could completely change your view of what is considered normal. And believe me, what you are about to discover may stir your curiosity like never before. Since the dawn of civilization, human beings have always sought answers to the inexplicable. Curiosity, this invisible force that moves us, leads us to explore the unknown, to find meaning in things that seem beyond the reach of reason. Rituals, as old as humanity itself, arose from this need for connection with something greater. With each ceremony, a new mystery unfolds, a new door opens to the invisible. And amid this whirlwind of emotions, we are fascinated by the idea that there are secrets kept in rituals that span generations. These rituals are not merely traditions or empty gestures. They are the materialization of our deepest questions, our beliefs and fears. Over the centuries, humanity has found in sacred practices a way to connect to the cosmos, to deal with death, to ensure survival. What separates us from those who lived millennia ago? Maybe very little. Perhaps even today, we continue to seek answers to the same questions that our ancestors asked around a campfire. In rituals, we find a mixture of faith, mystery, and symbolism. Some of these practices, to modern eyes, may seem incomprehensible, even bizarre, but they all carry an immeasurable weight of meaning. As we delve into these ancient secrets, we realize how much the unknown fascinates us. How much, even at the height of technology, we still feel the need to touch the transcendent. And this links us to a heritage spanning thousands of years. So, how can you not wonder? What do these ancient ceremonies teach us about the human spirit? Why do we remain so connected to these practices, even when science tries to explain the unexplainable? The truth is that by exploring these rituals, we are delving into something much greater than simple curiosity about countries. We are discovering who we are and, more importantly, who we can be. Long before words were written, rituals spoke the language of the soul. In primitive civilizations, the world was a vast place filled with unknown forces. Human beings, still fragile in the face of the immensity of nature, found in rituals a way to tame the uncontrollable, to dialogue with the invisible. Fire, for example, became one of the first sacred symbols, its dancing light representing both destruction and life. It was through him that our ancestors felt connected to the cosmos and the mysteries of existence. These early rituals were not only forms of worship, but also of survival. The need to protect ourselves from the forces of nature, such as storms, droughts, and predators, led humans to seek explanations and, more importantly, protection. Thus, ceremonies were held to appease the fury of the gods or ask for abundant harvests. Fire, earth, sky, and stars were deified elements. And, in the midst of this cosmic dance, humans saw themselves as mere instruments of a greater destiny. As time went by, these rites became more complex, acquiring new meanings. They were no longer just ways of dealing with daily fears, but of shaping the identity of each community. The emergence of the first local gods and deities brought to light the need to consolidate beliefs through collective celebrations. In these moments, human beings stopped being just individuals and became part of something much bigger, a community that walked in unison towards the unknown. Ancient rituals were, therefore, the foundations of the first societies. They created bonds between the members of a tribe, guaranteed unity, and defined the first norms of coexistence. No matter where in the world you found yourself, rituals emerged as answers to life's big questions. And it's fascinating to see how these traditions are still alive today, in different forms, in each country we explore. Deep in the Amazon, the Satere-Mawe people preserve a tradition that challenges the limits of the body and mind. For the young people of this tribe, the transition from childhood to adulthood is marked by a unique rite of passage, a test of pain and endurance. Involving the feared bullet ants, whose sting is considered one of the most painful in the world, this ritual is not just a demonstration of courage, but a proof of belonging. By enduring pain, young Satere-Mawe shows his community that he is ready for the responsibilities of adulthood. The ceremony begins with the capture of the ants, which are carefully placed in gloves made from leaves. The young man must wear these gloves for long minutes while the ant venom infiltrates his skin, causing excruciating pain. But what's really fascinating about this ritual is not just the intensity of the pain, but the symbolism behind it. For the Satere-Mawe, physical suffering is a form of purification, a way of connecting with the forces of nature that surround them. Pain, in this context, is not seen as something to be avoided, but as a portal to growth. As the poison takes effect, the young man's body trembles, his muscles contract, and sweat drips from his forehead. But what is expected of him is control, dignity. He must not show weakness because, in the eyes of the tribe, this is a lesson about life. Things will not always be easy, and suffering is part of the journey. The moment of taking off the gloves is a physical relief, but the real gain is in the mind of the initiate. He is now part of a lineage of warriors who have endured the same challenge. This ritual, although extreme, makes us reflect on the tests that, in one way or another, we all face in our own lives. It may not be with ants, but each culture has its challenges that mark the beginning of a new phase. And these traditions, so deeply rooted in curiosities about countries, are reminders that the path to growth is often paved with pain and resilience. In the mystical heights of Tibet, where mountains seem to touch the sky, there is a ceremony that challenges our Western understanding of death: celestial burial. For Tibetans, death is not the end, but only a transformation, a passage to a new cycle of existence. The body, seen as a simple temporary garment, is offered to the vultures in an act of generosity and detachment. The remains become food for the birds, which take them to the heights, completing the cycle of life and death in a poetic and spiritual way. This ceremony, deeply linked to the Buddhist belief in rebirth, shows us a different perspective on the body's final destiny. Instead of being buried or cremated, the deceased is taken to a sacred site in the mountains, where monks perform chants and rituals to ease their transition to the next world. The meat is carefully cut and offered to vultures, who, by devouring the body, free the soul for its next journey. For Tibetans, this process symbolizes complete detachment from the material world. The moment when the vultures descend on the body is seen as sacred. There is a calm that invades the place, an acceptance of the natural cycle of things. There is no sadness, but rather a deep reverence for the act of returning the body to nature. Vultures, which in many cultures are seen as symbols of death and decay, here become the carriers of the soul, lifting it to heaven. The deceased becomes part of the earth and air in an eternal cycle of renewal. This unique vision of what happens after death makes us rethink our own relationship with the end of life. Across different country trivia, we see how understandings of death vary, and in cases like this, there is a profound beauty in accepting that death is just one part of the soul's grand journey. Celestial burial, by reminding us of the impermanence of everything, invites us to value each moment lived. Among the Lakota Indians, spirituality is experienced in an intense and physical way, and no ritual reflects this in such a visceral way as the sun dance. This ceremony, performed to honor the Great Spirit and seek blessings, is a proof of extreme devotion. Men and women during the height of summer come together for a ritual that involves fasting, dancing, and bodily sacrifice. Participants' skin is pierced, and ropes are attached to their bodies, connecting them to a central post, representing the link between heaven and earth. The dance begins to the sound of drums, the participants in a circle, slowly moving around the sacred pole. With each step, they feel the pain of the ropes pulling at their skin, a constant reminder of the sacrifice they are making. However, the pain is not the focus, rather the spiritual purpose behind it. For the Lakota, this is a way of offering part of themselves to the Great Spirit, of showing that they are willing to suffer to obtain His protection and wisdom. It is a journey of devotion and transcendence, where the body and soul unite in a single search for redemption. Over the course of several days, participants dance, sing, and endure the sacrifice. The ultimate goal is spiritual vision, a mystical experience believed to be granted to the most devout. During the climax of the ritual, some free themselves from the ropes with a strong pull, breaking the ties that bind them to the post, in a symbolic act of liberation. This moment represents the direct connection with the divine, the breaking of the bonds of the physical world to access the spiritual dimension. The sun dance reminds us that, in many cultures, personal sacrifice is a means of approaching the sacred. These rituals, which may seem extreme at first glance, are rooted in a deep understanding of spirituality. Just as other curiosities about countries teach us, religious practices are living expressions of a people's most intimate beliefs. And for the Lakota, spirituality is not something that is thought about, but something that is lived intensely, with body and soul in perfect harmony. On the island of Sulawesi in Indonesia, the Toraja tribe celebrates death in a way that completely defies Western notions of mourning and farewell. For them, death is not a final event, but rather a long transition. The dead are not buried immediately. Instead, they remain with their families for months, even years, awaiting the great Rambu Solo Festival, where a ritual of trance and celebration marks the end of this earthly journey. During this period, the deceased are treated as sick, receiving care and daily visits. The Festival of Death is the highlight of this transition. Torajans believe that the soul needs time to completely disconnect from the physical world, and that, until the festival, the spirit of the deceased remains present in the family home. Thus, when the festival finally takes place, it is seen as an opportunity to celebrate the life that was lived, to thank ancestors, and to ensure that the deceased reaches Puya, the spiritual world of the Torajans. It is a ceremony full of color, music, and buffalo sacrifices, which symbolize the safe passage of the soul to the afterlife. During the ceremony, the atmosphere is one of reverence, but also joy. Family members gather, share stories, and honor the deceased with dances and songs. There is a deep belief that by keeping the dead among them for so long, the community strengthens its bonds and perpetuates the memory of the ancestors. Trance rituals, in which some participants enter an altered state of consciousness, are seen as a direct connection to the spiritual world, allowing the living to communicate with those who have departed. This way of dealing with death may seem strange to many cultures, but it reveals a lot about how different people see life and what comes after it. Amid these curiosities about countries, we discover that, for the Torajans, death is just another stage of existence, a stage that should be honored and celebrated rather than feared. The Festival of Death, with its trance and celebrations, reminds us that even in death there is life, a life that continues in the hearts and traditions of those who remain. Exorcism, an ancient practice surrounded by mystery, is a ritual that has spanned centuries, remaining alive in different cultures. For those who believe, exorcism is not just a religious ceremony, but a true battle between good and evil. It is believed that the body of the possessed becomes a spiritual warfare field, where invisible forces wage a fight for the soul. And for the faithful, this battle is real, frightening, and definitive. In different parts of the world, exorcisms are performed with the aim of expelling demons and evil spirits that, according to belief, take over the human body. Exorcisms are as varied as the cultures that practice them. In some traditions, fervent prayers and sacred chants are enough to drive out the evil spirit. In others, the ritual is more physical, involving sacred objects such as crosses and holy water, while the exorcist fights against the violent manifestations of the possessed person. Some of the most famous exorcisms, such as the case of Anneliese Michel in Germany, shocked the world and raised debates about faith, mental health, and the limits between belief and science. However, for those who witness these rituals, exorcism is proof that evil is real and that faith can overcome it. There is a tense moment in every exorcism when it seems like the battle is lost. The screams, convulsions, and profane words that come out of the possessed person's mouth create an atmosphere of fear and despair. But this is where the exorcist's faith becomes crucial. Armed with prayers and unwavering confidence, he continues until finally the evil entity is expelled. This moment of liberation is seen as a miracle by the faithful, proof that good always prevails. For those involved, exorcism is a reaffirmation of divine strength, of God's presence in the fight against darkness. These rituals, even though they are controversial and frightening, show us the depth of human faith and how, in moments of despair, people turn to the sacred in search of hope. Curiosities from countries around the world reveal different ways of dealing with the unknown, and exorcism is one of those answers. By observing these ceremonies, we are reminded that belief in the unseen, in good and evil, still profoundly shapes human behavior. In remote African villages, where nature dominates the landscape and spirituality is present in every corner, healing and witchcraft rituals are part of everyday life. The healer, a central figure in these communities, is more than a doctor. He is the guardian of ancestral knowledge, capable of communicating with spirits and manipulating invisible forces. Through herbs, chants, and incantations, he performs rituals that, in the eyes of many, defy Western logic. For members of the tribe, however, these rituals are the key to health, protection, and balance with the spiritual world. Healing in African traditions goes far beyond the physical body. It involves the soul and spirit, and it is often necessary to purify both for the body to recover. In one of these rituals, the healer may spend hours chanting, invoking ancestral spirits, and using sacred objects such as talismans and masks. The patient, in turn, actively participates in the process, entering a trance or ingesting herbs prepared especially for the ritual. The objective is always the same: to restore the lost balance, drive away evil spirits, and bring back harmony between the individual and the world around him. Witchcraft, on the other hand, is viewed with caution. While healers seek healing and well-being, sorcerers are feared, as they are believed to be able to manipulate forces to cause harm. African tribes deeply believe in the power of the invisible, and there is enormous respect for those who master this knowledge. The line between good and evil, between healing and witchcraft, is thin but fundamental. Ancestral wisdom is passed down from generation to generation, and the healer needs to be chosen and trained from an early age to perform their role responsibly. These healing and witchcraft rituals reveal a deep connection between humans and the spiritual world, showing us that, in different parts of the world, science and magic can coexist. Curiosities about African countries lead us to understand that for many, health and illness are not just physical issues, but spiritual ones. And for them, rituals are as essential as any modern medicine. Freemasonry, shrouded in mystery and surrounded by conspiracy theories, is one of the oldest secret societies in the world. Their initiatory rituals are surrounded by a veil of secrecy that, for many, is as intriguing as it is frightening. Only those who are accepted into the order have the privilege of participating in these enigmatic ceremonies, where every gesture, every symbol, carries a profound meaning. For Freemasons, these rituals are not just traditions, but a path to spiritual enlightenment and self-knowledge. Each step is a preparation for something greater, something that only the initiated fully understand. During the initiation ritual, the neophyte, the one who wishes to join the order, goes through a series of symbolic tests that test his character, his faith, and his dedication to Masonic principles. One of the most striking symbols is the blindfold, which represents the blindness of the profane world and the desire to be enlightened by the truth. Silence is a constant during the ritual, and each word is carefully chosen to impact the initiate. Little by little, he is led by more experienced masters who reveal the secrets of the order in stages, on a journey that requires patience and devotion. Freemasonry is full of symbolism: the square and compasses, the all-seeing eye, the columns of the temple. Each of these elements is carefully explained during the rituals, revealing that Freemasonry is not just a society, but a philosophy of life. For many, Masonic rites are a portal to higher knowledge, something that transcends what is visible and tangible. And although there are many speculations and legends about the true power of Freemasonry for its members, what matters is the search for truth and moral perfection. These rites, which have remained largely unchanged for centuries, continue to fuel the popular imagination and curiosity of many. Amidst the country's curiosities, Freemasonry stands out as an enigma that, even in the modern world, still attracts those who wish to discover its deepest secrets. And, like any well-kept secret, Masonic rites continue to intrigue, fascinate, and generate endless speculation. For the Xhosa people, one of the largest ethnic groups in South Africa, the path to adulthood is marked by a ritual that involves pain, courage, and tradition. Circumcision, performed on young males, is much more than a physical procedure. It is a rite of passage that symbolizes the transition from childhood to maturity. Each year, young Xhosa people leave their families and are taken to remote mountains where they remain isolated as they undergo this sacred ritual. For them, the process is a test of strength and a symbol of acceptance into the community. The ritual begins with the departure of the young people to the mountain, a place that symbolizes the distance from the children's world and the preparation for the new cycle of life. There, they are accompanied by elders who oversee the entire process and ensure that the spiritual meaning is respected. Circumcision is performed by a traditional healer, and the young man cannot show fear or weakness. It is a testament to his inner strength and desire to become a man, a full member of Xhosa society. Physical pain becomes a symbol of spiritual transformation. During the period of isolation, which can last weeks, young people go through several lessons about responsibility, respect, and the role of a man in the community. It's not just about enduring the pain of circumcision, but about learning the importance of sacrifice, leadership, and protecting your family and people. At the end of isolation, the young people return to their communities in a celebratory ceremony, where they are welcomed as grown men, ready to take on their new responsibilities. This rite, which may seem extreme to many cultures, is an essential part of the Xhosa identity. It strengthens community bonds and perpetuates traditions that date back centuries. Through these country curiosities, we see how different cultures view growth and maturity, and for the Xhosa, sacrifice and pain are fundamental stages on the path to adulthood. In the teeming streets of India, amid the sound of drums and sacred chants, thousands of devotees gather annually to celebrate the festival of Thaipusam. This event, dedicated to the god Murugan, is an impressive demonstration of faith and devotion. What makes Thaipusam so unique and sometimes shocking is the element of self-flagellation that many devotees perform as a form of gratitude or penance. During the festival, some pierce their faces, tongues, and bodies with metal hooks, while others carry large structures, called kavadi, attached to their bodies through these hooks, in an act of spiritual sacrifice. Preparation for the festival begins days before, with a period of purification. Devotees fast, pray, and meditate, preparing not only the body, but also the spirit for the sacrifice they are about to face. The moment of self-flagellation is not seen with horror or disgust, but as an act of deep connection with the divine. For devotees, physical pain is just a reflection of total surrender to Murugan, and each piercing is an offering to the god they believe is protecting and guiding their lives. Control of the mind over the body is the real goal here. As devotees walk through the streets, their faces express not suffering, but a kind of spiritual ecstasy. They head towards the temple, often carrying heavy kavadi, decorated with flowers and religious symbols, a journey that lasts hours. The crowd, which accompanies with songs and prayers, fills the streets with an almost palpable energy. The collective faith that permeates the festival creates an atmosphere of reverence and communion, where each participant, whether piercing their own body or just following the procession, feels connected to the sacred. The Thaipusam festival, with its extreme demonstrations of devotion, reveals to us how much human beings are willing to do to express their faith. Amidst the curiosities about countries and their religious traditions, we see that the relationship with the divine can manifest itself in surprising ways. And for Murugan devotees, the Thaipusam festival is not just a celebration. It is a reminder that true faith often requires deep and painful sacrifices. In ancient times, when the survival of civilizations depended directly on agriculture, fertility rituals occupied a central place in societies. Fertility, both of the land and of people, was seen as a divine blessing, something that needed to be carefully cultivated and revered. In cultures such as the Celtic, for example, the Beltane festival celebrated the regenerative power of nature and the symbolic union between the masculine and the feminine. During this festival, bonfires were lit and couples danced around it, while fertility rituals were performed to ensure a prosperous harvest. Sexual rituals also played an important role in many of these ceremonies. The act of physical union was seen as a representation of the fertility of the land, and in some cultures, it was common for spiritual leaders or specific couples to perform these rites at sacred sites. For participants, there was no shame or taboo, as these rituals were considered a pure expression of the connection between natural cycles and human life. Fertility, in all its forms, was openly celebrated as a way of ensuring the future of the community. The influence of these rituals went beyond agriculture. They permeated all aspects of social and spiritual life. Statues and symbols of fertility gods and goddesses, such as the famous Venus of Willendorf, were revered as protectors of the land and people. Each spring, people gathered to renew their faith in the fertility gods, believing that without these offerings and rites, crops would fail and families would be affected by infertility. The power of fertility was seen as the very essence of life, and neglecting these rituals would be considered disrespectful to the gods and nature. These rituals, which may seem exotic or unusual today, reflect the deep connection that ancient civilizations had with the natural world. In different country curiosities, we find traces of these traditions, which still echo in modern celebrations even if in a symbolic way. Fertility, both of the earth and the body, remains a universal theme, a reminder that life depends on cycles that are often beyond our control, but that we can honor through rituals and spiritual practices. Human sacrifice, a practice that seems unthinkable today, was a central element in many ancient civilizations. For the Aztecs, for example, the offering of human blood was a way to ensure that the sun continued to shine and crops prospered. The victim's heart, ripped out while still pulsating, was offered to the gods in sacred altars at the top of the pyramids. For them, blood was not just a symbol of life, but the link that connected humanity to the gods. It was believed that without this sacrifice, the world would fall into chaos, and cosmic harmony would be destroyed. Among the Mayans, human sacrifice also occupied a prominent place in their rituals. Warriors captured in battle were considered valuable prizes and offered to the gods as symbols of strength and power. The sacrifice was an honor for the victim, who believed he was ensuring the prosperity of his people. During elaborate ceremonies that could last for days, priests performed rituals involving music, dancing, and chanting, culminating in the moment when blood was shed as a divine offering. It was a way of maintaining the cycle of life and death, in which the sacrifice of a few ensured the well-being of many. Despite appearing brutal to modern eyes, human sacrifice was seen, in many cultures, as an act of deep devotion. The sacrifice was not carried out with cruelty, but with reverence and respect. In some African cultures, for example, human sacrifice was part of protective rituals, where it was believed that the death of an individual could appease ancestral spirits and ensure the prosperity of the community. This type of sacrifice was surrounded by symbolism and meanings that went beyond earthly life, touching the invisible forces that governed the spiritual world. These rituals, although shocking, help us understand how far ancient civilizations were willing to go to ensure their survival. In curiosities about countries around the world, we find traces of sacrifices in different cultures, which, despite being extinct, leave us traces of an intense connection between the human being and the divine. Blood, as a symbol of life, was seen as the most valuable currency to guarantee the continuity of the cosmic order. In the sacred lands of Mangalore, India, fire is not just a destructive force. It is a symbol of purification and rebirth. The festival of Agni Kelly, celebrated every year, is an impressive demonstration of this belief. During the festival, participants gather at night to throw fireballs at each other, in a ritual that challenges understanding of fear and danger. For devotees, fire is not something to be feared, but a spiritual entity that purifies the soul and brings renewal, even at the cost of burns and wounds. The ceremony begins with the preparation of fireballs, made from cloths soaked in oil. The participants divide into two groups and, to the sound of chants and drums, begin the ritualistic combat, throwing the flames from one side to the other. There are no screams of pain, just a feeling of surrender to the power of the fire. The burns that appear during the ritual are seen as marks of purification, scars that carry the symbol of your connection with the divine. Every flame that touches the skin is, in fact, a spiritual touch, a blessing that cleanses and strengthens. Fire, in Hindu tradition, is the bringer of offerings to the gods. In Agni Kelly, fire acts as a mediator between the human world and the divine world, transforming physical sacrifice into spiritual redemption. Participants, by burning themselves, believe that they are cleansing their souls of impurities and preparing themselves for a new phase of life. It is an act of faith and courage in which the body is offered to the sacred fire as a proof of devotion and trust in the gods. At the end of the ritual, participants are bathed with sacred water, sealing the purification process. The Agni Kelly festival, despite seeming dangerous in the eyes of many, shows us that, in some cultures, direct contact with the elements is a form of spiritual renewal. Amidst the curiosities of countries, we see that fire, since the dawn of humanity, continues to play a central role in rituals of purification and connection with the divine. And for those who participate in Agni Keli, the burns are a small price to pay for spiritual peace and soul renewal. At the heart of Tibetan Buddhism, the belief in reincarnation is one of the fundamental pillars that shape life and death. When a great Lama, a spiritual master, leaves the body, the monks begin a sacred quest to find the new vessel for the deceased soul. This process, called tulku, is deeply spiritual and involves detailed rituals. It is believed that the new Lama is the reincarnation of the previous one, and his discovery involves a series of mystical signs and ancient practices, which continue to be performed with great reverence to this day. The search for the new Lama begins with a series of omens and visions. Experienced monks enter into deep meditation, seeking guidance from the stars, dreams, and other spiritual phenomena. Sometimes the deceased Lama leaves clues before his death, pointing to the region or family where he may be reborn. It is a task full of challenges, as the new Lama can be anywhere, often in simple families far from large monastic communities. The search, which can take years, is a testament to the monks' unshakable faith and their trust in the eternal cycle of the soul. When the child is finally found, recognition is done through careful testing. Objects that belong to the deceased Lama are placed before the child, who, if he is truly reincarnated, will recognize them instantly. This moment is considered sacred, and the child is treated with great respect from then on. The new Lama begins, even as a child, to be trained and educated in Buddhist teachings, preparing himself to assume his role of spiritual leadership. He is not just a teacher, but the continuation of an unbroken lineage of wisdom and compassion. This process, which may seem strange to many, reveals the depth of the Tibetan belief in the continuity of the soul. Amid curiosities about countries, Tibetan Buddhism offers us a unique vision of death and life. For Tibetans, reincarnation is not a mystery, but a certainty that reinforces their faith in the cycle of existence. The search for the new Lama is, above all, proof that life does not end with death, but continues in forms that surpass our understanding. The end of the world is a topic that has always fascinated humanity. In different parts of the globe, ancient and modern civilizations perform apocalyptic rituals that seek to understand or even influence the final destiny of humanity. These ceremonies vary widely, from collective prayers to stave off destruction, to preparations for the arrival of a new beginning. In the ancient Mayan civilization, for example, the calendar predicted the end of a cycle, and, with it, rituals were performed to ensure that the world could be reborn after the apocalypse. Fear and hope coexist in rituals that seek to interpret divine signs about the end of times. In some cultures, such as Haiti, belief in the apocalypse mixes with voodoo. During certain rituals, known as apocalyptic voodoo, spirits are summoned to warn humanity of the impending end. Frantic dances and trances take over the participants, who believe that these spirits have the power to guide humanity towards survival or chaos. Voodoo's apocalyptic rituals are full of deep symbolism, where good and evil meet in a spiritual battle for the continuation or destruction of the world as we know it. Even in Western cultures, fear of the end of the world has led to curious practices. Sects and religious groups throughout history have carried out intense preparations for the apocalypse, believing that their actions could influence destiny. In the 20th century, the famous Heaven's Gate sect took their beliefs to the extreme, resulting in a tragic event that shocked the world. These apocalyptic rituals, although often seen as eccentric or fanatical, reflect a deep human desire for control over the unknown and unexplainable. As we explore country curiosities related to apocalyptic rituals, we see that the end of the world, for many cultures, is not just an inevitable tragedy, but an opportunity for rebirth and renewal. These ceremonies, which defy logic, show us that the fear of the apocalypse is deeply rooted in human beings. Whether through prayers, dances, or sacrifices, the objective is always the same: to avoid the end, or at least to prepare spiritually for what is to come. In different cultures around the world, faith manifests itself in an extreme way, through rituals of bodily mutilation. For many, these scars are sacred marks, symbols of devotion and spiritual commitment. In Southeast Asia, for example, during the Thaipusam festival, Murugan devotees pierce their faces, tongues, and bodies, believing that this physical sacrifice brings them closer to the divine. The scars resulting from these rituals are not just reminders of pain, but spiritual trophies that symbolize overcoming limits and purifying the soul. In Africa, tribes such as the Karo of Ethiopia also use body mutilation as part of their rites of passage. The men of this tribe, upon reaching adulthood, undergo a ritual in which deep scars are engraved on their bodies. These marks not only indicate strength and resilience, but are seen as a point of pride, representing belonging and respect within the community. The more visible the scars, the greater the honor given to the man. Physical pain is transformed into a symbol of status and spirituality, strengthening cultural ties. Mutilation also appears as a form of penance and purification in several religious traditions. In Christianity, although less common today, self-flagellation was once a ritual practiced by monks and believers who believed that inflicting pain on the body helped to atone for sins and draw closer to God. During Holy Week, in some countries such as the Philippines, penitents walk the streets self-flagellating or even crucifying themselves in dramatic acts of devotion. The belief that physical sacrifice brings redemption is a concept deeply rooted in the spirituality of many. These bodily mutilation rituals, seen in different curiosities about countries, show the strength and complexity of human faith. The body, in these contexts, becomes an altar, a vehicle of spiritual expression. And although to some these practices may seem extreme, to the participants they are a living testament to their devotion and how much they are willing to sacrifice for their beliefs. Ancient Egypt, with its mysteries and wonders, is perhaps one of the most fascinating civilizations in history. At the heart of their beliefs, the embalming ritual occupied a central place. For the Egyptians, death was not the end, but a passage to a new life, and the body needed to be preserved so that the soul could continue its journey into the afterlife. The pharaohs, considered demigods, were embalmed with extreme care, in a process that could last months. The objective was to ensure that their body remained intact for all eternity, so that they could reign in the afterlife with the same grandeur as in their earthly lives. The embalming process began with the removal of the internal organs, which were carefully stored in canopic vessels, each protected by a deity. The brain, curiously, was discarded, while the heart, it was believed, was the center of life and emotions, being left in the body. After removing the organs, the body was wrapped in natron, a special salt that helped dehydrate and preserve the skin. This meticulous process symbolized not only the preservation of the physical body, but the maintenance of the pharaoh's power and essence for all eternity. After dehydration, the body was wrapped in countless layers of linen, each accompanied by sacred amulets and magical inscriptions that protected the pharaoh in the afterlife. The body, now transformed into a mummy, was then placed in a richly decorated sarcophagus, ready to be buried in grand tombs such as the pyramids or the underground complexes of the Valley of the Kings. The embalming ritual was a work of art, a spiritual science that involved both faith and technique, preserving not only the body, but the pharaoh's legacy. This impressive ritual reflects the Egyptians' deep belief in the afterlife and the power of preservation. As we explore the curiosities of countries and their traditions, we realize that for the Egyptians, the body was more than a simple receptacle of the soul. It was a symbol of power and eternity, and embalming, with its precision and reverence, ensured that the pharaohs remained immortal, both in the memory of their people and in the legends that spanned the centuries. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, where the silence of nature is interrupted only by the songs of birds and the whisper of trees, indigenous shamans conduct rituals that transcend the physical world. These rites of passage to the world of spirits are sacred moments that connect man to nature and the invisible. The Amazonian tribes, especially the Huniquin and the Yawanawa, believe that everything around them, trees, rivers, animals, is alive and interconnected with the spiritual world. And, to access this dimension, power plants, such as ayahuasca, are used in rituals that last hours, sometimes days. The ceremony begins with physical and spiritual preparation. The participant, often in search of healing or wisdom, purifies themselves with fasting and meditation before ingesting ayahuasca, a drink prepared with native plants that induces altered states of consciousness. Guided by the shaman, he is taken on a deep inner journey where visions and encounters with ancestral spirits are common. These rituals are not just mystical experiences, but healing processes that aim to restore balance between the body, mind, and spirit. The forest, with all its grandeur, becomes the stage for this spiritual transformation. During the trance, the participant is able to face their deepest fears, resolve past traumas, and receive teachings from the forest spirits. The shaman's chants, known as Icaros, guide the journey, providing security and guidance to the spiritual traveler. For the people of the Amazon, these rituals are seen as rites of passage that help the individual mature spiritually and connect with the natural world in a deeper and truer way. These rites of passage to the world of spirits reveal a deeply spiritual and holistic worldview, where the human being is part of a greater whole. Amidst the curiosities about countries, we see that the indigenous traditions of the Amazon, far from being just folklore, are living expressions of an ancestral wisdom that teaches us the importance of harmony with nature and the healing power it offers. In Southeast Asia, snakes are venerated as sacred creatures, symbols of power, healing, and renewal. In regions such as Thailand and parts of Malaysia, purification rituals involving venomous snakes are performed to test participants' faith and devotion, as well as to promote spiritual connection with the natural world. These rituals, which may appear risky to many, are performed with an unwavering trust in the deities and spiritual forces that are believed to protect participants from the dangers of serpents. Devotees, before participating in the ritual, undergo days of spiritual purification, fasting, and prayer. To the sound of drums and sacred chants, they enter a state of trance, believing that the spirit of the snakes will take over their bodies, guiding and protecting them. During the ritual, the snakes are handled with dexterity, passing through the bodies of the participants, who hold them and kiss them without fear. The deadly poison, which in other circumstances would be lethal, is seen here as a purifying force that, if respected, brings spiritual healing and protection against evil. The connection between man and snake in this context is symbolic. The snake, which sheds its skin and is reborn, is seen as a symbol of renewal and transformation. Devotees believe that, by undergoing this ritual, they are being spiritually reborn, leaving behind their impurities and fears. Trust in deities is so strong that, even when snakes bite, many believe that the poison will not do any harm, as they have been spiritually protected. These serpent purification rituals, found in various curiosities in Southeast Asian countries, show us the complex relationship that many cultures have with nature and the supernatural. For devotees, there is no distinction between the spiritual and the physical, and the snake, one of the most feared animals in the world, becomes the vehicle of greater power. At the end of the ritual, participants believe they are purified, ready to face life's challenges with a new spiritual perspective. Rites are more than simple traditions. They are the very essence of the cultural identity of many peoples. Through rituals, communities keep alive the memories of their ancestors, their values and beliefs. In many cultures, these rites are passed down from generation to generation, creating a continuous line that connects the past to the present. In Africa, for example, initiation rites mark the beginning of adulthood and are celebrations that reinforce family and community ties. By participating in these rituals, young people assume their place within society, perpetuating a tradition that has survived time. Modernity, however, has brought challenges to maintaining these traditions. Globalization and urbanization have caused many rites to become less common or to be modified to adapt to new times. In Japan, for example, ancestral rituals such as Gion Matsuri, they are still performed with great reverence, but increasingly modern cities and the fast pace of urban life compete with these traditions. Despite this, many communities strive to keep these ceremonies intact, seeing in them not just a return to their roots, but a form of cultural resistance. The rites also function as a point of unity for people who live far from their homelands. Immigrants around the world recreate ceremonies from their home cultures as a way of preserving their identity in a foreign environment. In the United States, for example, Latin American communities celebrate the Day of the Dead, keeping alive a tradition that connects families to their loved ones and their Mexican roots. These celebrations are a reminder that no matter where we live, our cultural traditions continue to define us and connect us to something greater. As we explore curiosities about countries and their traditions, we realize that rites are much more than passing celebrations. They are profound manifestations of cultural identity, landmarks that help preserve the history, values, and cohesion of a people. Even in the face of changes brought about by modernity, many rituals stand the test of time, showing that the past and present can coexist, keeping alive the traditions that shape the world. Even though we live in an era of technological advancements and rapid changes, ancient rituals still find a significant place in the hearts of humanity. These rituals are not just a relic of times gone by, but continue to exert a profound power over people, connecting them to their roots and offering a sense of continuity amid the uncertainty of the modern world. Whether through purification ceremonies, rites of passage, or festivals of devotion, rituals are an essential link between human beings and the mystery surrounding life and death. In today's world, ancient rituals may seem out of place or even outdated to many, but in fact, they offer a form of cultural resistance. At a time when globalization attempts to standardize beliefs and practices, these rites are a reminder that cultural diversity is a wealth to be preserved. They teach us that, even in the midst of modernity, there is inestimable value in keeping alive the traditions that connect us with something greater than ourselves. What these rituals show us is that, everywhere in the world, people share a common need: the search for meaning, belonging, and transcendence. In many cultures, rituals offer answers to the deepest questions of existence, helping the community deal with the uncertainties of life, death, and the afterlife. They are more than mere events. They are moments of introspection and connection with the unseen. As we continue to explore interesting facts about countries and their traditions, we realize that these rituals play a vital role in preserving identity and making meaning. And perhaps that's what keeps them so powerful and relevant to this day. After all, no matter how advanced society becomes, The human soul will always find ways to seek the sacred, the mystical, and the eternal.
Hey explorers, if you love discovering the amazing curiosities and stories we share here on Exploring Nations, how about supporting the channel with just $1? This small gesture can make a big difference and is essential to keep this content going. Without your support, our journey might be cut short. And there's more. When you shop on Amazon, use our special link. It costs you nothing extra, plus you get an exclusive discount and it helps us out a lot. The links for donations and Amazon are pinned in the first comment. Don't let this adventure stop, we're counting on you. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and drop us a comment.